I think that's for people with conventional ankles.
Your eyes are saying, Adam, that was an inside thought.
We weren't really cool enough to when we were 18. So
Sorry, I don't know why I just nodded then. Welcome to the On Library Podcast with me, Adam Cleveley.
And me, George Denham. It's very nice to be in the Yarn Library.
We have Georgia, who's visiting us from the Netherlands.
Yes, I did my Erasmus there several years ago and very much enjoyed being there. And now I'm coming to you from Cambridge in the Yarn Library.
I am absolutely filled with joy.
Because what is the topic of the episode today?
The topic is travel, Georgia.
It's travel.
Is Georgia your name, or do I need to refer? Do you have another name when you are
Janusz?
Janusz.
Yeah, no, it's not Janusz. Actually, no, that's my office mate's name. Anyway, yeah. So I'm sorry if that offended anyone. I didn't mean it to. I say that from complete adoration and love. I wish I was Dutch. I've read the Dutch citizenship rules so many times because I'm trying to find a loophole, some way of making that happen for me. I think I was meant to be Dutch and then just wasn't,
Shame.
I don't know. I feel very much at home there as a place. And we are talking about travel today, which involves going to different places, which is why it's not why actually at all. I just suddenly reached for Dutch today. I'm
going to immediately jump in and ask you if you've been to Stephen and Penelope.
Yes, I have.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that sort of spoils my story.
No, I have. I didn't buy anything there. I went round and there was so it's for anyone who doesn't know, what is Stephen and Penelope?
Stephen and Penelope is a yarn store. It is a very famous yarn store because it is it's partly run by Stephen West.
Mm-hmm. And who's Stephen West?
Stephen West is a knit.
Don't laugh. We have a broad audience. Not everyone is yarn adjacent.
I was on my yarn retreat last week. There was at least one person there who didn't know who Stephen West was. I'm obsessed with him as a designer because I think what he does with textures and colours is so amazingly powerful, and I just think it is. I feel so moved by so many of his designs. And there's so much of what he tries to do that I find myself trying to copy or imitate. I have the world of, but because he's such a big figure for me, who I follow, then it means that I naturally fall into that terrible trap of thinking, well, everyone must know who he is.
It's all differences. There's all differences. I found out last night that Dima didn't know what licorice all sorts were.
I mean, there's the tumbleweed.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know if the tumbleweed was there because you were like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah, no, what are licorice all sorts, Georgia? I do
Bertie
know.
Bassets. My grandma used to work in the factory packaging them. So
Amazing.
I'm very
Did you
into
get
Bertie
seconds
Bassets.
all the time?
Yes, we did. And I would only eat the pink ones. So I was explaining that to Deems last night.
Oh, pink ones were good.
So when I was born, I was too big for the scales. I was born at home. And the way that they knew how roughly much I weighed was because my grandma held me in her arms and went, she's bigger than one of the trade packs of Bertie Bassets. She's bigger than one of the kilos. And I forget how big the bags are. I'll find out and put it in the... Should I Harvard reference the story about
I don't think
Bertie
you need
Bassett's
to. I think this is your
sentiment. Yeah,
this is some PhD paranoia coming through here. Sorry, for anyone that's not aware, Georgia's studying for a PhD at the moment.
Gosh.
And also giving me withering looks every time I bring it up now.
No, it's fine. I just don't want to cancel myself, Adam. Okay.
It's pure joy for me. Thank you for being here, Georgia, and then
travel. Distract him very nicely with the Dutch voice.
Yes,
so you're talking about Stephen and Penelope. It's a very nice shop in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam.
It's an incredible shop, and but also it's a destination because so many people follow Stephen West and then want to see his little bit of the store.
Yeah.
Originally, it isn't his store. Everyone thinks about it being Stephen West store, but actually, the original owner was Malia, and the shop was a place where Stephen would go and would sit and knit a lot. And because he would sit in there and knit a lot, that's where they sort of joined forces and became a bigger and bigger thing. And they're now in their third store because it started small, went medium, and now it's very big. But yeah, it's one of my lovely travel stories, is because I took my 3 children to Amsterdam or Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. I guess 18 months ago. And like when I taking 3 children around, trying to get all the sightseeing, lots of museums, all the rest of it done, they were sort of wondering then why I allowed them. I'd very carefully chosen the route towards Stephen and Penelope and just made sure, that we went to an ice cream store immediately beforehand, and that when they said, can I have 1 or 2 scoops, please can we have 2 scoops, I was like, you can have as many as you want. And like 2, 3 scoop ice creams, and they just thought it was Christmas and hadn't quite clocked why are you doing this, Dad? We literally come out, children, like with fistfuls of ice cream, walk around the corner and like...
Sticky children in a yarn shop.
Oh, no, they don't want to go in. So I just left. I said, we got to Stephen and Penelope, and I just told them, right, you lot stand out here and have your ice cream. I'm going in there.
Oh my gosh.
I know they're safe on the street. There's 3 of them together. They know I'm inside. They groan at me, but they can't groan that much because they've all got ice cream. And I absolutely love, because you get to see, whenever you travel, I'm always, my children know that because they don't want to see me on Google Maps looking for where the yarn shops are, I've done that beforehand. I know exactly where they are. I link them in my brain, and I'm like, I plan the map out so that we can randomly come across them. Like, I didn't know there was going to be a yarn shop here. Let's just pop in here for a minute.
Yeah, I was talking to Dima about this once, about how local yarn shops, when they don't necessarily stock local yarn, that if you then have tourists going in, that they'll be looking for something special. And Cambridge is a really touristy place, right?
Yeah.
And we don't actually have many places that, I love our local yarn shop, really, really, really love it. And good friends with people who work there, and they've been trying to kind of branch out and have more stuff. But for a long time, they didn't really have local yarn stuff or things that were nice, pretty skeins.
I've talked to them about the same problem, and because they want tourists come in saying, I want local Cambridge yarn. But
exactly.
It's not like cheese or something. It's unfortunately, Cambridge isn't an area where you raise sheep, because most of the farmland around Cambridge is super fertile and therefore lends itself to agricultural crops instead of livestock. Whereas you got to Yorkshire and you've got different kinds of terrain where sheep graze very well, because basically you've got thinner soils and so on, and it's grassland. But
so many hand dyers and stuff, they don't necessarily have wool that's local, but they might get something dyed locally. And they get the base from Yorkshire.
That's the whole question about how local do you want.
I have a funny one about that, but carry on.
It's difficult. If you import the yarn from, say you get it from the Andes in South America, but it's locally dyed in Cambridge, or what if it's locally spun in Cambridge, or locally which is the bit that's local that has to do it? If it's a 8 skein kit and I put those 8 balls together in Cambridge, I've made the kit in Cambridge. Then we get into
patterns, Cambridge patterns,
fair trade practices, which is a whole other world.
My reason for mentioning the Cambridge thing was that Adeem sort of said, really? Are there people going into yarn shops looking for things? And I sort of looked at him funny and went, what do we do every single time we go to any other place in any country, anywhere?
Well, I tell you what he does. He switches his brain off whilst you're going into those shops.
He is a crochet man now. I think he's enjoyed going into yarn shops so much and seeing my joy and then seeing all the cool stuff. And he's fully in. He's all in now. He's into Tunisian crochet. He's into crochet. I got him a card deck of the crochet stitch, the crochet stitch card deck thing. He's been working his way through that. He's working on different projects. He's a crochet man.
I'm wondering if this is some modified Stockholm syndrome. we wanted to talk about Stockholm, didn't we?
Well, I suppose he's always loved origami, but the really intense, detailed one where you sit for hours and do weird snowflakes with pressing.
Is that where kirigami? Kirigami is when you cut it with scissors as well, I think.
Yeah, some of that. But also there's the ones where he'll for Christmas as a present for someone, he'll if you take a sheet of origami, quite a big sheet, and you fold it in loads and loads of ways, where then you have to get a small a scraper or something, a folding tool, and then you'd love it. It pops out, so you don't cut anything, but you're just folding it in this kind of really geometrically intense way where it starts to, then you can like shape it to be 3D because the folds like fold into itself in this piece of paper. And so he's got into crochet on this like deep geometric level. And I think he's gradually convincing his other like mathematician nerd friends that crochet is the way forward.
I feel like there's a loss for knitters there, but at least he's into fibre
We need
arts.
some relational, like we need some separation.
Fair.
Yeah.
So we were going to talk about travel.
Yeah, travel. So yeah, going around to lots of different yarn shops. You mentioned Stockholm there, which actually does tie in with the funny yarn thing about is it locally, is it not? I went to Sweden. I seem to remember looking at the time, I did not check my sources before recording this episode, but I seem to remember there's something about like, yeah, Sweden doesn't actually have a lot of sheep. Like they don't really have like a as much of like a sheep tradition of like yarn and wool. There's certainly a lot of knitting there, but it tends to be Norwegian or Icelandic, or you know, Denmark has a lot of yarn. But I was passing through Stockholm, and so a lot of the yarn shops that were there, we were there in sort of like around summertime. Loads of them were closed for their summer house time, and it wasn't necessarily on websites or anything. So you just got there and there's like a note in the door and in this glorious yarn shop, and you can like see it all just hanging and just gorgeously. And then you scan this little translated note thinking, are they saying they're in lunch for 5 minutes? No, they're away for 5 weeks in the hytte. I mean, that's Norwegian, but yeah, so that was sad. But I think I was like thinking, oh, well, it's a Scandinavian, it's a Nordic city. Of course, there'll be some kind of knitting for Olive situation. And when there wasn't necessarily, there were some really gorgeous small shops, but not that many. And then I ended up going to one really lovely shop that was so nice. And then was looking, you know, going there thinking, oh, is this all Swedish? Is this all local? And this is before I kind of knew like, no, we don't really do that. The yarn was from Yorkshire.
Amazing.
And it had been dyed in Sweden. And so I was buying like Swedish dyed Yorkshire base wool to then go back to the UK with it. I was about to say fly, but actually that was one where we did it all like on land. It was a bit of a rogue interrailing trip.
Oh, you went back around by train?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
We never went interrailing because we weren't really cool enough to when we were 18. So
sorry, I don't know why I just nodded then. That was a nod. I wasn't acknowledging that you're not cool enough. I was acknowledging
all the cool kids went interrailing. So like the cool kids we decided to do it when we were 26 years old, which was weird. We had this like duality of like staying in grown-up hotels and then also sometimes staying in these like tiny, like really dingy places. And then those nights I'd just be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm too sweaty. And then
take me back to my spa hotel.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a weird mix. And then we got to the end of it, of having moved around for 2-3 weeks. And I was like, we've spent just as much money as we could have spent. It was like supposed to be like a budget friendly, fun trip. But because I'd gone to so many cities, that meant I had to go to so many yarn shops that, between like all of that and then just having to live off McDonald's in 7 different countries because we were so exhausted and we were arriving at weird times. So we probably had McDonald's in like 7 countries or whatever the local equivalent was. And then I spent so much money and we were like, nah, this is, we're never doing this again. So
fair enough. Well, I mean,
it was fun though. It was fun.
Once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Your experience in Sweden, though, in a way is opposite when I went to Norway. I was back in February, like it must be 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I don't know. But I remember being so delighted because I went into a train station there and over in the corner I saw a yarn shop.
No way.
But it was a massive yarn shop as well. Like it was probably one of the biggest and best yarn shops I've ever been into in terms of like color selection and like needles and notions and everything that I needed. Like it was just really, really surprising, but it's, you know, it's just, I guess that's why wouldn't you have a yarn shop in a train station?
Yeah. Where it's common enough that people want to pop in on their way home from work or
or you're about to sit on the train for a while and you forgot your knitting or you need an extra ball of something. Or
it's quite a good place even just to go for yarn, like as a destination place. Wow, that is combining a lot of my joys, trains and knitting all in the same place. Wow.
It's making me want to go to Scandinavia and
I need to do that now.
on some long train journeys. The one place I travelled for yarn where I was surprised in the opposite way was when I went to Iceland. Because I didn't know anything about Icelandic yarn, and I'm a bit of a nut for all the different fibres, and I hadn't realised, because I didn't do any research, that's not my vibe. I just I'm just gonna roll into something and see what happens, and so off I went to Iceland, and then like immediately found out that all of the yarn there that isn't imported, all of Icelandic yarn is from one breed of sheep, because it's all locked in. You're not allowed any other breeds of sheep on the island, because the island, they're very careful about what
the flora,
the flora and fauna, and so that's it. It's Lopi, and that's it. And you can get it spun in different ways. You can get it in different colours, but that was.
Yeah, I'm really sad that I haven't been to Iceland whilst being a knitter.
Yeah.
Because, Adam knows this. I'm realizing now that actually I'm not just saying this to Adam, so Adam knows. My ex-boyfriend from when I was at my undergrad was Icelandic, and from like next to Reykjavik in Kópavogur, and which is like one of the sort of suburbs as Reykjavik kind of spans out. And his grandmother is a really amazing knitter, and like knit all the family jumpers and stuff. And she even made one for me. And so I have this Icelandic jumper. And knitting wasn't really on my radar as an adult at that point. So I didn't really get to like engage with the knitting culture there, which is really like very much a strong knitting culture. One of our our podcast is, we've got a fair amount of listeners in Iceland actually. So hi,
hello everyone in Iceland.
So I've been there like 5 or 6 times and like know quite a lot of stuff about it. It's weird. I was like the relationship didn't work out in the end. That was like, how do I say this?
You were still swatching?
Oh my God. I mean, yes, I was still swatching, and I was trying to say, how do I say this in a nice way where I'm like, yeah, I broke up with him. Yeah, it was a while ago now, but I was so in love with Iceland that whenever I encounter like Icelandic things, or I think about it, or I look back at old photos, just at how much I was at home there. I mean, similar in the Netherlands. I think being like a tall, blonde person, like I can go to either of those countries. It was like the first places I could go and like not get catcalled.
Naturally just fit in.
Yeah, exactly. I felt very much like,
literally your people.
Yeah, genetically speaking. It's just such a beautiful place. And I was full on and like, I'm going to get married, move here and have babies and will be Icelandic. And then wasn't. And there's like a weird grief for me that I didn't get to be an Icelandic knitting lady. Yeah, at some point I'll maybe wear that jumper here. And then I almost feel weird wearing it now as a knitter, because I feel like people go, oh my God, did you knit that? And I have to be like, no, is that my ex-boyfriend's grandma?
And I can't not have it.
Yeah. Like
so my brother asked me to, so I knitted an Icelandic jumper. My brother, before I went out, he said, if you're going to Iceland, he had an Icelandic jumper. I think he'd acquired it through a romantic connection as well, earlier in his life. And he had mislaid it, or, it had been lost for years, but he remembered the warmth of it. And what he loved about it was the pattern, the feel of the wool, all the rest of it. Like it worked for him. And he said, if you're going, I would really love you to make me an Icelandic wool jumper and an Icelandic pattern. And my also requirements are, the jumper that I had was too warm. So can you make me one that isn't too warm? And that was fascinating for me, because Icelandic jumpers, so then I was talking to, I went to 100 yarn shops and, obviously, talking to all of the people about like how those jumpers are made, basically with different numbers of strand. You basically knit the same pattern, but with different numbers of strands, depending on the use of the jumper, whether it's for mild outdoor use, or whether you're literally going to be standing outside in the cold in it in winter, in which case it's made with enormous amounts of yarn in every strand.
Yeah, like I have 2 Icelandic jumpers, technically speaking, and they're both very different kind of vibes. And one of them I would wear much more often because it was more of a Icelandic summer weight kind of light one. That one wasn't knitted for me, but it was actually my then boyfriend's one from childhood, like teenage years, that then it kind of gave like a girly cropped fit. So the thing is that when when Amma, as in the grandmother, made this amazing jumper for me by my measurements, she made it in this very grandmotherly way where it was going to cover all my kidneys and like be very sensible and very thick and like wintry.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't like the most flattering thing. It's like gorgeous and really beautiful, but I kind of low-key preferred wearing the other one because it was more like light and fun and breezy. And when I realized that you were fully explaining jumpers. And
So this time I'm totally remembering the second half of the story, and I'm going to tell it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Keep going on your tangent.
Sorry, my tangent. No, just you've reminded me that I had the 2 jumpers, and I suppose the other funny part about this is that when we broke up, I was like really in my minimalist era, and really didn't have a lot of things. And when we sat down to we were only in uni, but like, we were living together. We did like a division of the assets, sat in the garden, and we were like, okay, let's do this peacefully. Let's figure out what you want. And the only thing I wanted was his teenage jumper. And that was like a big ask, actually. In hindsight, like taking his jumper that was knitted for him when he was a teenager by his grandmother was like a big thing. But he got like everything else. He got all the speakers. He got all the. I just like, you can take anything else. That's the only thing that I'd really want.
Well, it's interesting if historically, if you go back in like Eastern Europe and into Russia, and you go back, I don't know how far you'd have to go back in time. I suspect it's not that long, but fur coats were obviously so valuable that they were written into wills.
Yeah.
And I wonder to what extent that would be the case in knitwear. Exactly.
Well, I suppose there's knitwear, I suppose, in Iceland, and like knitting. I wonder how much is a ubiquitous thing that actually then
in Iceland, because so many people do it. I'm sure there's well,
but they are things that you can pass down. I mean, I totally get you on the fur coats and the warmth things. I mean, my in-laws are Siberian and Vladivostok vibes. So yeah, cold weather.
Vladivostok is cold. That's from personal experience.
Fancy.
I was just trying to work out how am I going to drop that in there.
Did you?
I'll just say it.
Did you hit up any yarn shops while you were there?
I didn't. I was very much younger, and as a foolish young child, I wasn't into knitwear in quite the same way. Sad times.
Where have you travelled for? Your story.
I'm going to get back to my story because I can't contain it any longer.
Okay,
Georgia.
go.
So, because it was, it's a custom garment, and I love nothing more. That's not true. I really enjoy being able to knit something custom for someone that they say, I want a hat that feels like this, or here is a scarf that I wear, and I don't want it to be like this because of this problem, like a feature of the fabric or a feature of the how the yarn feels or whatever. And this was exactly it with my brother. We looked at patterns together in terms of what he found visually attractive so I could understand his aesthetic, but also there was this temperature problem. And basically what I got down to was, how do you make an Icelandic jumper with Icelandic wool from the smallest amount of fibre? Because Icelandic wool has a real problem in that it absolutely just pulls apart. Mm-hmm. Because it's not, when you're buying the big yarn cakes, it's not spun up. So it doesn't have all of that structure and integrity to it.
This is like a deliberate thing, or it's not strictly deliberate, but it's just like by nature of the fibre. So,
also because when you're knitting, if you're knitting 6 or 8 strands together, and that is common in Iceland, that you would knit 6 or 8 strands together for the warmth of it, it doesn't matter that's not all spun into it.
But
here was I trying to work out whether I could knit for him with one or two strands, and basically then you're into the very limits of what the fibre can do. And this lady in the shop said, well, then what you have to do, then the cheat is, why didn't you buy a strand of silk core mohair, because that gives you all the tension strength in the yarn, and that will give the jumper longevity. Absolute genius idea. Mm-hmm. So that's what his...
I remember when you were knitting this, it was gorgeous.
And it's so cool. But also, like, it has you can feel it as a jumper. It's not that weighty. It's not that heavy as a result, because it's a mixture of Lopi and mohair. Mm-hmm. And it means that he really wears that jumper a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's great that he gets to wear it inside for a lot of the year rather than otherwise, our climate is too temperate, really.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with like knits, about the applicability of them in different weathers. And I saw something recently that was shared by one of the sort of big knitting pages on Instagram about like origins of certain patterns that we might like from a Western perspective associate with like, oh, that's like an Icelandic style jumper, or it's Nordic, like giving Nordic vibes, like the sort of the yoke with all the kind of, how would you describe that? The triangular, like the pointy dangles.
The pointy dangles.
The pointy dangle yokes. Yeah. Sorry, that's not the right term. Not the right craft term for that one. But actually its connection and actually origin within Indigenous communities in Greenland. I think they'd refer to Greenland, and possibly what would be described as modern Canada. And I'd like to look that up and maybe put a link to it, because I didn't dive too much into the post. I think they were mostly just showing the pictures and saying like, actually these things have origins elsewhere in different communities. And I think it's an important thing to acknowledge. And I found it really interesting as well. So really gorgeous, bright colours versions.
It's fascinating. And I mean, also what I love is I've seen some really modern interpretations of like the traditional, because in the traditional patterns obviously use the colours of the sheep as well. So you're off, that's one way that you can have.
Well, that was the thing in some of these designs from Indigenous communities. They were really bright colours, but I don't know if those were more modern things or if they were like more traditional.
And it depends on the dyes that you have available locally. I mean, that was another thing about travelling in Iceland for a bit, very briefly. I talked about Stephen and Penelope at the beginning. That's the location of another of my like favourite ever yarn shops. It was this beautiful room, and the reason I loved it, like overall, it wasn't the most beautiful place to be at all. And it didn't have all my favourite yarns in the world in it, but it had all the ingredients of like, this is the vibe, because it was a big room outside of any town. And in one corner, there were all of these pots and pans literally on a stove that were boiling away. Mm-hmm. And the pots and pans were boiling away all sorts of plants, because that was making natural dyes. Uh-huh. And then sort of towards another corner, there was a yarn library, like a collection of all the different yarns, and like a shop. And then there was another wall that was covered in like puzzles and sort of knickknacks. But all of it was in this kind of homely kind of way. And there was a big table in the middle, which was like a big kitchen table. And there were a couple of sofas off to the side. Like, if I ever have a yarn shop, like if I had my dream yarn shop, it would be that vibe, but in the centre of Cambridge.
Oh my gosh.
Like, can you imagine? But
that'd be so nice.
You just couldn't afford it. Like, I know that the rent for that, if you transported the size of that into the centre of Cambridge, you'd be talking about something that would like rent £150,000 a year, £200,000 a year as rent.
It's a lot of yarn.
And like, who's going to sell that much?
Yeah.
But you could just tell walking into it that it was both made with love, and also it was perfect for what it was.
It's reminding me of when we, in the Rogue Yarn Club that you were very much a part of but didn't attend this retreat because you were busy being Adam, when we went to the Lake District last year at some point, and one of our lovely friends who also kind of took on the role of organizer found this amazing sheep farm where the owner also had yarn I think she did hand spinning, and then she was weaving. She also had the wool sent away to be spun like by an actual mill thing. So you got like really high quality, well spun stuff. I mean, hand spinning is also high quality, but you know what I mean? There was a full breadth, but it was all from her own sheep. And I think possibly there was some alpaca in there as well. And, we met all the sheep, and then we went to this, effectively it was like a little shed in the back of, kind of a manger style, like nativity scene. And then you went through this little door, and there was just this room that was kind of cold because it was literally like an outhouse. And it was just full of the most amazing yarn. And this lovely lady who was showing us around, I'll have to find the name of the place. She had all of these amazing blankets. So there was one blanket there that I saw and went, that's incredible. I don't need a blanket though, but that's just the colours in it. Amazing. And I said, okay, just don't get it. And just walk around, do a once round and see if you want it. And like literally I did my little, just walk around this small, tiny room, just see if you want. And as I was turning around, one of our friends, very deservedly, and I'm okay with this and it's fine, went, oh my God, this blanket, I'm totally getting this. And she bought the blanket of my dreams. And I have big plans I need to like knit it or make it or something. It was so gorgeous, like the colours in it. Oh my goodness, just one of a kind, beautiful, like really bright purples, pinks, yellow. And I'll ask, it's my friend Madeline, and she does Instagrammy things, and I will ask if she will post a picture of it or like put it somewhere on stories or something that people can look at, because it's incredible. It's incredible.
But I love, colours breathe new life as well into like old pattern designs as well. And that's one of the things about, seeing Icelandic knitwear or traditional Norwegian patterns or whatever, but also then when people just put them in bright neon colours as well, I just think it's fabulous, or combining them. I love that.
I just think I've got this propensity to, when I travel places, it doesn't even have to be craft specific travel, but I try and find a way to make craft happen. It reminds me of like the Mean Girls thing where she's like, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. And that's me with craft. I go places and it's like, I'm trying to make craft happen. I mean, craft is happening, but I'm trying to find the craft. And it doesn't matter where I've gone in the world. I'm always kind of like, is there a craft museum here? Is there a yarn shop here? I'm trying to not go to so many yarn shops, I think, because I'm kind of content with the stuff that I have, or the stash that I have. I want to try and pare that back, I think, like being conscious of not over consuming.
Well, one of the things for me with traveling with knitting, so I mean, I have a variety of different experiences with it. One is I was traveling in Zambia and Malawi. In fact, that's where I was knitting. I remember, that's what I love about traveling and knitting, is because I remember specifically the connection between the garment I was making at the time and the holiday memory that I have with it.
Tell me you're a knitter without telling me you're a knitter.
So I was knitting my pattern Ziggy Waves because it was knitted in sock weight yarn, so it was nice. It was a scarf that is
travel friendly,
exactly, because that's an important consideration. A lot of curiosity when I would knit that and people would see it, because it was there were two things that were unfamiliar about it. One is that wasn't a knitting part of the world, and then the second interest was that I was so I'm paraphrasing here, but very close to just saying it was a man doing a woman's task is how it was. Like, why are you doing that? Isn't making textiles and fibers.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like, I don't know, interesting. I find that always, I like having that conversation generally because I'm quite literally giving two fingers to it. But I'm also aware that like there are bigger and more significant cultural differences that you're going. But I enjoy that everywhere I travel. I love, like, because I take my knitting on trains, planes, and I like every country I go to now. I mean, I don't travel without knitting ever. Like, I'll be walking into the office later this afternoon, I would regard that as movement, and therefore I've got my knitting with me.
Same. I casted on a new project yesterday, some socks, because I've not knitted socks in ages, and I thought I actually need a more travel-friendly project, because I've had a lot of, the things that started out being travel-friendly have got too big to be travel-friendly. Yeah. And socks are one of those tried and true, like eternally travel friendly things. I will say though that I've knitted a lot of sock cuffs and maybe heels. I've had a lot of sizing problems with things because they're travel and I tend to out and about. I lose track of like how long something is. And I will also say I've got really big feet and very strong ankles.
We've talked about your big feet before.
Yes,
on
my
our
big
podcast.
feet and strong ankles. And oh gosh, I mean, I started knitting those chicken socks I mentioned a while ago for my dad for Christmas. He's seen them now, so it's not spoilers. I'd already added like at least 2 chickens onto the maximum of the design and added like an extra thing. And he's like got buffalo legs. I mean, I say this with love. We're just strong-legged people, the Denhams. And so it got on him. But my granddad was there going, is that not a bit tight? So I think I'm going to have to knit this chicken sock again. I've decided to knit toe-up socks, which I'd not actually done because people have been saying for so long to me like, oh, no, it's terrible. But actually, it's meaning that I can get a sense of the right fit.
100% of the sock I have ever knitted, it was a toe-up sock.
Yeah.
The one. I don't understand why you do. I know people are going to say and explain to me why it's top-down, but from bottom up, you can then do it so it fits your foot and turn the heel at the point where you know it's going to fit your foot.
Yeah.
Rather than if you go the other way.
I think that's for people with conventional ankles. I've knitted so many socks that have not come to fruition because I've had to abandon them because I've not. I know people say, oh, you can make adjustments and find your vanilla sock pattern. I've never got as far as finding my vanilla sock pattern that can be my nice travel friendly project because I'm not conforming to those standards. Standard arrangements for socks. So I'm really enjoying the process of like actually, hopefully they're measurements that I can reverse engineer and then use for other sock patterns if I go top down.
As we're talking about this, I'm thinking about my big problem with socks is that working on small radius, I just really hate it. But I was thinking actually, why don't you knit a whole sock end to end instead?
Oh, what do you mean?
So as in you cast on from the toe up halfway up your calf, that's where you cast on, and then you could knit a whole sock and then just rejoin it again.
Wait, what?
On the other end.
Toe to calf?
Yeah, so like rather than your rows being around your foot, the row goes all the way along your foot and up your leg.
I see. I thought that was maybe what you meant, but I thought, are you really going to avoid small circumference things that much?
Absolutely. Also, your eyes are saying, Adam, that was an inside thought. which is fair.
I don't believe in inside thoughts. Sometimes though, when I get really passionate about things, it's late at night at my house, Dima does say to me, inside voices, Georgia, just because the walls are really thin.
Amazing.
I mean, you've been for like knitting specific travel well. Yeah. Probably more than me. Yeah.
Probably.
Well, not even probably. Yeah, actually. Yeah, very. I've done craft specific travel, I think, related to research for my PhD.
Off the top of my head, I haven't been internationally that many times. I've been to New York a couple of times for Vogue Knitting Live. Iceland, obviously. I feel like I should mention, because I don't think we've talked about it, but I went to a yarn festival in Munich Knits.
Munich Knits. Tell me more about Munich Knits.
I've done a podcast on it, Georgia.
Original listeners of the podcast who enjoyed last season.
I feel like it may have come up a couple of times in this season.
Yeah, maybe. I did tell myself actually that maybe once I've finished, I think because the whole time I've been doing my PhD.
Yeah.
Sorry, every time I say it now, I'm expecting Adam to burst out laughing. This whole time has been so anchored down. I haven't really got to do much solo travel. Also, during the time that I've been a student here, I met my husband, I moved in with him, like we got married. And I realized more recently that I've kind of not been doing as much solo travel. And that used to be a real normal thing for me. Like I traveled all over Europe. I went to like George O'Keeffe's house in New Mexico, like on my own through the desert on buses. Like I was very much a confident solo traveler. And now I'm turning into, we don't drive, but I'm basically the travel equivalent of a passenger princess on a train. Not always. I do have to like step in and sort things out. Actually, no, I do a lot of travel admin because I'm like really into trains. But I just, I haven't done so much solo interest travel. And my sister-in-law, who's like a mum of two, super duper amazing theatre director, amazing person, she kind of inspired me recently because she organised herself a trip where she didn't take her kids and also didn't tell her husband where she was going. That was part of the plan of like, this is going to be my thing that I do after this show is off my plate. Yep. And she went solo in her 40s. She took herself to Lapland.
Amazing.
And she had the most amazing time. Like Dima was getting all these videos. And, you know, she doesn't really speak English almost at all. She's Hungarian, speaks Hungarian Russian. And she took herself to Lapland on her own for like, I need to reclaim my solo fun pride. And she had an amazing time. And I was like, I need to do that. And I thought maybe I would go to Vogue Knitting Live when I finish writing up or do something like that, where I can go to some kind of dream craft destination and like save up for it and then be like, I'm going to reclaim my crafty vibes.
Well, I am very much looking forward to the next one I'm going to is Swiss Yarn Festival, which is I think it must be about 2 or 3 weeks away. It'll probably be like less than 2 weeks from when
Where
this
is
airs.
that?
It's in Switzerland.
No, but where in Switzerland?
It's in Zurich.
Okay.
And I'm massively looking forward to that. I'm there the whole time and like a day before and a day after. I'm there as their VIP, Georgia.
Oh my gosh, look at you.
But like that's also the thing I love about going to yarn fairs. I'm get to talk to so many people and I get to like, that's a magic thing. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But the one place that's on my knitting destination, which I haven't been able to get to, and because I never think about it at the right time, and I'm way too last minute, is Shetland Wool Week.
Yeah. Because
that requires planning. It's now so popular, like internationally. Like by now, Shetland Wool Week's in third week of September, I think. But if you looked now, I'm pretty sure you can't get places, travel, all the rest of it. But it's it's absolutely bucket list number one.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly on my would love to go list for sure. I mean, I went on my honeymoon to Orkney, and so just going to that part of the world feels very special to me, and I'm always very drawn to it. And I think maybe that will be one of my
we ask people
trips.
Like we've done surveys with people the follower base through Make a Getaway, the retreat business that I'm running now. Sorry, not all of us can do PhDs, Georgia. But like in terms of like popular destinations where people want to go, Scottish Islands and Scandinavia comes up really high. The difficulty that I have is like if you're running like, where the boundary sits between a knitting retreat and a holiday, where knitting is a sort of side to what you do. Because if you're spending all your day doing things and seeing things that aren't knitting, then you don't get the knitting vibes. But anyway,
sometimes if your goal is, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I get what you mean. Like if the goal is to go and knit and have time to knit, then going to a fancy pants destination might not be facilitating your knitting because you go and do stuff.
Exactly, because you want to go and see all the things which you can't do at home, whereas technically I guess you can knit at home.
All of these conversations is making me think of a really lovely book that I read. I listened to the audiobook version of it, read I think by the author a couple of years ago. It's called Knitlandia. I think her name is Clara Parks. She's an amazing designer, writer around knitting and craft. And she's got a couple of books that are sort of memoir style where she writes about her adventures and things in craft and knitting and stuff. But I think Knitlandia, it's got a lovely, very lovely illustration of a little car on the front with like her riding over these roads and stuff and little mountains. And it's about her like travel adventures in knitting and like going to different places. And so some of the things like you mentioned about Iceland, I'm pretty sure that there's a chapter on a visit to Iceland and doing one of these kind of retreat, like, you know, traveling around and going around on this coach trip and seeing all these sheep. Yeah, so it's a beautiful book and I almost want to read it again because it's so lovely. And yeah, I mean, I had put my academical hat on in preparation for this episode, and we kind of ran out of time.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think one of the things I want to acknowledge, at least, and maybe I won't go into it, but I can like leave them there. Further resources. We've talked about like knitting shops in different destinations and things, but actually, acknowledging how much craft is connected to local communities and particularly rural communities. And I've found a couple of pieces of research and studies and things. One of them was comparing or like drawing together lots and lots of studies. So it's over 1,000. I think I read the number out to you earlier. It's like 1,300 studies that were looking at the impact of craft on development of rural areas. And so there you're talking about like craft in relation to tourism quite often, but also like regional like skills, trades, all that kind of thing. Yeah, there's a couple of papers and things around craft and tourism that are very interesting. I'm thinking of one, Alana Kant, who writes about like craft without skill. It talks about this particular study where like she sees all these makers who are mostly creating things for tourists and like the tourist market and the art market. And like, it's really fascinating when you look at that like layer of it, and some people being really motivated to do that for a pursuit of skill, and other people just seeing it as like a cultural job that they've been born into.
Yep.
I also think there's really interesting stuff. So like India is amazing for craft research. So a lot of people working there. So craft in India is the largest employer, like of all industries, craft is the largest employer in India. Yeah. And so it's not economically the largest sector, but in terms of actual people's lives, because there are so many rural areas and so many traditional crafts, it's the largest employer. That always blows my mind. Yeah, I think acknowledging craft's connection to rural areas, that it's a privilege to go into these communities, but also like tourism is a big part of in the modern world of like how these things are carrying on. And one of the comparative studies that I'll link, they talk about how craft in rural areas sort of helps prevent against like depopulation. So people moving out of rural areas. Yeah, it's just something I want to acknowledge, because traveling, going to all these like lovely rural places and seeing all these sheep and yarns or whatever craft it is, like a lot of that is connected to often very poor communities in rural areas. There are some really great studies and things I didn't get to dive into, but yeah.
I think we're going to be coming back to travel in a future episode, because I've got plenty more to say as well.
Yeah, I haven't even talked about Chinese craft museums, and like that's a whole episode in and of itself. So
I'm afraid at that point I'm going to say that's all we've got time for this week.
Yarn Library.
Love our jingles.
Off we go. I will actually make that into an official jingle at some point.
But thank you very much for listening. I've been Adam Cleveley.
And I've been the Georgia Denham from the Yarn Library.
And that's the outro, is it?
You've been listening to Yarn Library Podcast with Adam Cleveley at Cleveley Knits and me, Georgia Denham at Tulip Pearl. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share and subscribe. And if you didn't, shh.